Her toes are beautiful feet. She has such pretty feet. Of course, everything about her is pretty, beautiful. And I know she felt it. She couldn't have missed it. She's not naive either. That girl is not naive.
What you just heard was no ordinary love confession. It was a chilling moment between a father-in-law and his daughter-in-law. The man making the confession, Susan Powell, the woman on the receiving end, his son's wife, Susan Powell. This is a story of obsession, control, and ultimately, murder. In December 2009, Susan vanished without a trace. Authorities strongly suspected foul play, and all signs pointed to her husband, Joshua Powell. However, despite being the prime suspect, Joshua was never charged. Then, in a horrifying turn of events, on February 5th, 2012, Joshua did the unthinkable. He murdered his 2 young sons before taking his own life. Let's start at the beginning, with Joshua Powell. Born on January 20th, 1976, in Puyallup, Washington, Joshua Powell grew up in a deeply dysfunctional household. His father, Susan Powell, was an abusive and manipulative man, and his parents' bitter divorce only worsened the family's fractures. Stephen held a deep-seated resentment toward the Mormon Church and was accused of exposing his children to pornography at a young age. As a teenager, Joshua displayed disturbing behaviors. He allegedly killed a small animal, once threatened his mother with a knife, and even attempted suicide. By the late 1990s, Joshua was attending the University of Washington and dating a woman named Catherine, whom he met at a Mormon event. However, his controlling nature soon surfaced. He dictated what Catherine could do, forbade her from seeing her family alone, and became obsessively possessive. When Catherine visited a friend in Utah, she made a life-changing decision. She broke up with Joshua over the phone and never returned. In November 2000, Joshua met 19-year-old Susan Cox at a dinner party in Tacoma. They married just a few months later in April 2001 at the Portland, Oregon Temple. Susan Powell attended the wedding, video camera in hand, capturing every moment. But if you look closely at the footage, you'll notice something unsettling. Stephen's camera was fixated almost entirely on Susan.
Let's see the ring. Let's see that ring. Hold your hand up, please.
There's a couple.
Okay, and this ring.
And my nails that aren't done, thanks.
Just sitting there.
See, the ring has 2,000 backwards and forwards on it. That's cool.
And my
on
mom
the band.
was there. And then
Okay.
there's another one. We got
Great.
the-
Now we will no longer look at your fingers. We will look at you.
Later, he wrote in his journal, "When my son first brought her home, I didn't think much of her, but now, I can't take my eyes off her." What started as admiration soon spiraled into a full-blown obsession. Joshua and Susan's marriage had its struggles early on, but things took an even darker turn when they moved into Stephen's home in South Hill, Washington, in 2002. Living under the same roof gave Stephen unrestricted access to Susan, and his behavior became increasingly disturbing. He followed her around the house with a camera. Even during his son Joshua's graduation, which we have seen earlier, Stephen's camera was almost always fixed on Susan.
What does the yellow represent, Susan?
Honors.
Oh, honors? Okay. He's in my camera.
Looking at
Recording.
you. Recording you. You can stand up and wave. Someone else is yelling my Josh.
Hey, Josh, wave. There you go.
Perfect.
Take our own, the same film, same camera, and same background.
That's what
You
he
know?
had. Same camera.
It might have been a little bit tampered, but let's try one more.
And then you can tap when together.
Just turn around to the, there we go.
Stephen's diary revealed even more disturbing behaviors. He stole her underwear from the laundry. He spied on her using a mirror under the bathroom door. Susan noticed. One night, she confided in Joshua, telling him that someone was going through her laundry. She asked him to store her clothes somewhere safe, unaware that the intruder was already inside the house. In short, Stephen followed Susan around with a camera, stole her underwear, and anonymously posted love songs about her online. One of those love songs featured Susan herself singing backup vocals, something she later regretted.
It's plain to me too that you do has made me love you. I only feel love. I only feel love when I'm with or without you. I only feel love for that something about you. I only feel love for you. True love doesn't make itself.
In an email, she expressed her discomfort, writing, "It's like I need to take a shower after reading his lyrics." Stephen later wrote in his diary that he recognized his behavior was abnormal. "I know this is highly problematic, but I am madly in love with Susan. I desperately want to have her." He even admitted to stealing Susan's used feminine hygiene products and hair, labeling and storing them in plastic bags. But his obsession didn't stop there.
Oh, move your hand. Move the box.
This is a week after waxing. No hair.
Hmm.
Woo-hoo.
See any here? I'm gonna do it. No, it's really pretty clear.
There is hair, you just can't see it because it's short. Hair grows in stages. Do me a favor, when Josh gets home, show him this, okay?
Okay.
Because I want to see what he says.
You have a nice profile too.
I hate my profile.
Actually, it's really pretty.
Everyone threatens that I have the cock's nose, which is a huge bump right there.
No, I don't see any. No, there's no bump.
Good.
Of course, Joshua wasn't oblivious. He noticed some of what was happening. So, not long after, he and Susan moved out of Stephen's house and began renting their own place. However, even after moving, Stephen's obsession didn't stop. During visits, he stole Susan's childhood diaries, made digital copies, and reread them obsessively. Stephen also frequently documented the arguments between Susan and her husband Joshua, hoping they would divorce soon. On another visit, when Susan was sick, Stephen offered to give her a massage. Later, he recorded a video in his hotel room, talking about the experience.
I just had what is probably the most erotic experience I've had in my entire life. I hate to say it, I mean, of course, because I haven't had that many experiences, but Susan has been feeling ill. She had a cold, and I offered to rub her feet, to rub her toes, to give her some stimulation. That went on. I probably rubbed her feet, her toes, her beautiful feet. She has such pretty feet. Of course, everything about her is pretty, beautiful. And I know she felt it. She couldn't have missed it. She's not naive either, I know from what I've read in her journals. That girl is not naive. When I started massaging her legs, I would have loved to go all the way up her legs, but I did do her calves because her feet were resting in my crotch, so I sort of rubbed her calves. She didn't seem to mind at all having me that close. I mean, I was close. I was touching her with my crotch. It's hard to remember everything I did. And I love that woman. She is so beautiful. I can't even get enough of her. Can't get enough of looking at her. She's so pretty.
Then in July 2003, Stephen learned that Susan and Joshua were considering moving out of state. This news sent him into a panic. He decided it was time to confess his feelings. On July 13, 2003, Joshua and Susan were at a trucking company in Kent, Washington, where Joshua was training for his commercial driver's license. Stephen, never far away, followed them there with his camera. When Joshua got into a truck to practice driving, Stephen seized the opportunity. He offered Susan a ride home. She accepted. Little did she know his camera, hidden inside his bag, was still recording. As they drove down the highway, Susan mentioned their plans to move. Stephen couldn't hold back any longer.
I'm probably wrong, but I've really fallen in love with you.
I don't know. I mean, for the last year and a half, you're about the only thing we can think about.
Silence filled the car. Susan, just 21 years old, was trapped in a van with her 53-year-old father-in-law, who had just confessed his love for her. She tried to change the subject. Stephen refused.
And I don't know where it began. It probably began when you were living with me and you come into my office and, let me feel your legs smooth, relaxed, whatever. And then it just went from one thing to another. That experience on the couch, on your couch in Yakima 6 months ago was just, I know that, it was a massage, right? But just being with you for 2 hours and holding you and maybe I'm getting the wrong signals from you. Maybe I'm interpreting something that I shouldn't be interpreting. It just, for example, when we were sitting on the couch, it just felt like you were very, I was extremely aroused, and I think you were somewhat aroused, at least I thought.
Susan was horrified. She rejected him outright.
I don't know where you're going with this.
Susan, I don't. I'll tell you what
I'm married to your son, and I should just be the daughter-in-law.
I know.
Which puts me a step beneath your own children.
By 2004, Joshua and Susan moved to Utah, desperate for a fresh start. But their marriage was already crumbling. Joshua became more controlling, refusing to let Susan visit her family alone. He drained their finances, quit jobs impulsively, and refused to buy Susan basic necessities. By 2008, Susan had seen enough red flags. She secretly wrote a will stating, "Our marriage is extremely unstable. If I die, it may not be an accident, even if it looks like one." She also recorded a video documenting their assets, just in case.
This is me. Hi. Sorry. And it is, can you see that? 11:44 a.m. And I am documenting all our assets, just in case of any emergencies, fire, flood, damage, disputes. And we have 2 Samsung monitors. And this is Josh's computer, and there's some type of backup device and speakers. And here's the kind of pimping out stuff he's done to his computer. He built it himself. I think there's like 5 hard drives, something about doing rape.
Less than a year later, Susan Powell vanished. On December 6, 2009, Susan Powell and her 2 young sons attended church as usual. Later that afternoon, a neighbor visited their home and left around 5 p.m. The following day, alarm bells rang when the boys failed to show up at daycare. Concerned staff tried to reach both Susan and Joshua, but their calls went unanswered. Joshua's mother and sister Jennifer went to the house only to find it eerily empty. Fearing the worst, they called the police. Officers forced their way inside, expecting to find a tragic case of carbon monoxide poisoning. Instead, they found an abandoned house. No Susan, no Joshua, no children. Oddly, 2 fans were set up, blowing air onto damp carpet, but there were no obvious signs of a break-in. Then, as evening approached, Joshua returned home with his sons, but Susan was nowhere to be found. At the police station, Joshua explained his absence. He had taken his boys on an impromptu camping trip in the middle of the night, in freezing temperatures, with a storm rolling in. He claimed he left Susan sleeping at home and had no idea what happened to her. Investigators immediately questioned his story. A December camping trip with 2 small children? It didn't add up. They searched the supposed campsite, but found no signs that anyone had been there. Investigators also discovered that Joshua hadn't informed his employer that he would miss work. His excuse was that he had mistaken Monday for Sunday. Then came another red flag. Susan's wallet, purse, and ID were found inside the house, and her cell phone was found in Joshua's car, yet he couldn't explain how it got there. Police also interviewed the couple's older son, who confirmed that the camping trip had happened. But he also said something chilling. his mother had gone with them, only she never came back. Shortly after, a teacher reported that one of the boys had made a horrifying statement. "Mommy is dead." The child even drew a picture of 3 people inside a minivan, with his mother in the trunk. Police scoured the Powell home, uncovering a grim set of clues. Blood traces matching Susan's DNA were found on the floor. A handwritten letter from Susan revealed her fear for her life, and there was one more discovery that raised eyebrows: a $1.5 million life insurance policy in Susan's name. DNA testing later confirmed that another blood sample in the home came from an unidentified male, further deepening the mystery. As investigators built their case, Joshua's actions became increasingly suspicious. He drained Susan's retirement accounts, withdrew the children from daycare, and canceled her chiropractic appointments, all within days of her disappearance. Even more disturbing, he had previously spoken with coworkers about how to dispose of a body in an abandoned mine. Rather than cooperating with authorities, Joshua packed up his sons and fled to Puyallup, Washington, moving in with his father, Stephen Powell. By Christmas Eve, Joshua was officially named a person of interest. Soon after, a website about Susan's disappearance appeared. Anonymous posts primarily defended Joshua. It was widely believed that Joshua and his father, Stephen, were behind the posts. By the end of 2010, both men claimed that Susan had abandoned her family due to mental illness and left with another man. Susan's family strongly denied these allegations, stating there was no evidence to support them. Back in Utah, the investigation took a shocking turn when police learned more about Stephen's disturbing obsession with Susan. A search of his home revealed over 4,500 voyeuristic images, many of Susan, taken without her knowledge. The Powell family's secrets didn't end there. Investigators discovered that Joshua's brother Michael had suspiciously sold his Ford Taurus to a salvage yard in Oregon soon after Susan's disappearance. When police tracked down the vehicle, cadaver dogs detected the scent of human decomposition in the trunk. However, DNA testing proved inconclusive. In September 2011, Utah authorities searched a remote desert location called Topaz Mountain, an area where Joshua often went camping. Signs of digging were found, but no human remains surfaced. The case took another dark turn when Stephen Powell was arrested for secretly recording young girls, as well as possessing child pornography. Following his arrest, Susan's family fought for custody of her 2 sons, arguing that the children were in danger living with Joshua. A judge agreed, granting Susan's parents temporary custody. If Joshua wanted his sons back, he had to move out of his father's home. Joshua pretended to comply, renting a house of his own, but authorities later discovered it was a sham. He never actually moved in. On February 5, 2012, a social worker named Elizabeth brought Susan's 2 sons, Charles and Braden, to Joshua's house for a supervised visit. The moment she arrived, Joshua grabbed the boys and slammed the door in her face. She pounded on the door, begging him to let her in, but he refused. Then an explosion. The house was engulfed in flames. Investigators determined that he had spread gasoline throughout the home before lighting the fire. The coroner's report confirmed that Charles and Braden died not only from carbon monoxide poisoning, but also from brutal chop wounds to their heads and necks. It was assumed that Joshua had attacked them with a hatchet before the fire consumed them. In the moments before his death, Joshua sent out farewell emails and withdrew thousands of dollars from his bank account. He had also changed his life insurance policy, naming his brother Michael as the primary beneficiary. Charles and Braden were buried at Woodbine Cemetery next to a memorial for their missing mother. Joshua's remains were cremated. A year after Joshua's horrific murder-suicide, his brother Michael took his own life, jumping from a parking garage rooftop in Minneapolis. Investigators had been closing in, questioning him about why he had ditched his car in Oregon. His evasive answers only fueled suspicions. Following Michael's death, authorities confirmed what many had long suspected. Joshua and his brother had likely worked together to cover up Susan's murder. On May 21, 2013, West Valley City Police officially closed Susan Powell's missing person case. In March 2015, Susan's father won a lengthy court battle against Joshua's 2 sisters over control of Susan's estate. Joshua's sisters had attempted to declare Susan legally deceased to claim her life insurance, but her father ultimately secured full control over her assets. Susan's family also sued the Washington State Department of Social and Health Services, alleging that the agency prioritized Joshua's parental rights over the safety of his sons, leading to their deaths. In 2019, a jury found the department negligent and awarded Susan's family $98 million. Susan Powell was released from prison on July 11, 2017, after serving 7 years for voyeurism and child pornography. He died of natural causes in Tacoma, Washington on July 23, 2018. To this day, Susan remains missing, and most believe she was murdered by Joshua. She was the victim of a husband who saw her as disposable, a father-in-law who viewed her as an object of obsession, and a family willing to go to unimaginable lengths to protect their darkest secrets. So what do you think of the case? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. And as always, stay safe, do something that makes you happy today, and I'll see you in the next one.